Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day to everyone. We are from Group 2 and today we are presenting our design for a cold storage facility that keeps frozen food at a minus 18 degrees but uses solar power and also smart control instead of just on a grid all day. I am Shahid and together with me is Robbie, Ishraf, Haikal and Hamid. Our supervisor is Engineer Dr. Hilmi bin Hussein. So, why does Malaysia need a better cold storage design? There are three reasons. The first one is we are keeping the food at a minus 18 degrees Celsius, but at the outside it is almost 32 until 35 degrees Celsius. That a very big difference, and the compressor has to fight against it 24 hours a day and every day of the year. Second one is most cold rooms in Malaysia still uses refrigerant called R404A, which is a very bad for the environment due to its warming impact is almost 4,000 times worse than carbon dioxide, and it is already phased out under an international agreement. The third one is the power grid is not perfectly reliable. According to TNB reported an average 48 minutes outage per customer last year. For a cold storage, even a short blackout without any backup power is a real risk to the stock. And here is the problem. None of these things are new. What is new is they are all happening at the same time, while the electricity tariff structure is also getting more complex, and most SME cold storage rooms are still using a very basic on-off control that cannot respond to any of this. So, before we show our design, we need to explain what a typical Malaysia cold store looks like today. We call it Datum A. It runs completely on a grid and no battery, no solar. It uses that R404A refrigerant we just mentioned. The compressor is fixed speed, so it can only be fully on or fully off, which is why it uses a lot of extra current every time it starts. And the insulation is usually only 100 to 150 millimeters thick, with some heat leaking in through the joints. This is not a bad system, it's just an old technology. This is what our project is improving on. So, what are we actually trying to achieve? We have 4 objectives and we will come back to this exact 4 objectives at the very end of the presentation to show you how we met them. Objective 1, to design an envelope, meaning the walls and the doors, but keep minus 18 degrees efficiently. Objective 2, to add a solar power and a battery storage to an SME business can actually afford without sending back the power into the TNB grid. Objective 3, make sure the design works not just in one city but across different parts of Peninsular Malaysia, north and south, because sunlight levels are not the same everywhere. Objective 4, use a smart controller that can predict energy usage and shift power use away from expensive time of the day. So, this is not designed only for one location. Solar radiation in Peninsular Malaysia ranges from about 4.5 to 5.5 kilowatt hour per square meter per day, depending on the region. So, we built our sizing method to adjust to that instead of locking it into one number. Now, Ishraf will explain how we benchmark our design against the best cold storage system in the world.
Thank you, Shahid. Now I will explain how we compared our design to the best cold storage system in the world and why we cannot simply copy them. To judge our design, we use two references. The first one is Datum A. Shahid already explained. That is the normal Malaysian cold store. We only use that to explain why our project is needed. The second one, Datum B, is the important one. This is the global best-in-class example, Lineage Logistics, a company with fully automated cold storage facilities in the United States and the United Kingdom. They use ammonia refrigerant, solar power that covers almost all their daytime electricity, and fully automated warehouse with almost no human workers working in and out. Every single score in our comparison matrix is measured against Datum B, not Datum A. Datum B is set as the 0 point, and we score our design as better or worse than that. So why can we not just copy Lineage Logistics directly? Two reasons. First is money. Their fully automated warehouse costs tens of millions of US dollars just for the robots and racking system. That is not something an SME cold storage company in Malaysia can afford. Second, safety rules. They use ammonia refrigerant, which is toxic and can catch fire under certain condition. Under Malaysian safety standards, if you use ammonia, you need a large buffer zone around the building, away from other buildings. But most Malaysian cold storage sites are inside busy industrial parks, so there is not enough space for that buffer zone. So ammonia is simply not realistic for us. So our idea is keep the same spirit as Lineage, solar power, smart control, low emission, but we replace every part that does not work in Malaysia with something that does. So this table just put the two side by side. On the left is the normal Malaysian system, while on the right is Lineage. You can see the difference. Grid only versus solar powered, fixed speed versus various speed compressor, old refrigerant versus a clean one, thinner insulation versus thicker insulation, and then the gap between these two columns is basically our whole project. Our job is to close that gap wherever we realistically can. Before I hand over, I want to be honest about where we still have work to do. Right now, no cold storage facility in Malaysia combines all four things we are proposing. Good insulation, our refrigeration setup, solar and battery, and smart control all together. So we do not have a real local example to directly compare our whole system to. Our wall insulation numbers are also based on supplier information and standard guidelines for now, not from a real building we measured. And the amount of cold air that leaks out every time a door opens is still the hardest thing to control, because forklift need to go in and out.
Thank you, Ishraf. Now, I will walk through the refrigeration system itself, how we calculated the cooling load, which refrigerant we choose, and how we handled the safety side of it. So, before selecting a compressor, we must determine the total heat load, which comes from our 4 ingress factors sum over 24-hour life cycle. First is transmission, representing heat continuously conducting through the wall, roof, and the floor. So it is depending on region's temperature differential, which is where our design scale across the Peninsula Malaysia. Second is the product load, which consists mainly of sensible heat from thermal abuse when frozen goods are unloaded. Thirdly, the infiltration. This infiltration comes from the forklift access door. It is quantified using ASHRAE enthalpy method and reported at 15 to 30% of the total load, making it a critical factor. And finally, we have the internal load, which consists of evaporator fan motor, defrost cycle, high bay LED lighting, and active forklift operation. So we sum this for variable and apply around 10 to 15% safety factor for peak operational anomalies. The total is what our system is sized to handle. So, moving on, for refrigerant selection, we chose R290 or propane for our refrigerant. R44A, or the conventional choice in Malaysia, has a massive GWP of 3,922, and it is already under Kigali Phase Down commitment. In contrast, R290 or propane has a GWP of 3 only, zero ozone depletion, and provide a higher coefficient of performance COP. We evaluated the R744 carbon dioxide, which has GWP of 1 and A1 safety classification. However, we rejected it because it is trans-critical operation, require component above 100 bar, specialized gas cooler, and local contractor familiarity that simply does not exist in Malaysia yet. We also ruled out R717 ammonia despite its excellent thermodynamic, because its B2L toxicity classification and it's outright under Malaysia commercial park zoning rule. So R290 is commercially available through local contractors but is classified under A3 flammable. So this slide show detail exactly how we manage that risk architecturally rather than derating the design. So as you can see, this is the core refrigeration architecture, and it presents the most important safety decision in our design. So the entire R290 charge is sealed outdoor with a multiplex rack of package unit. By confining the refrigerant outdoor ventilated volume, we complied with ASHRAE 15 charge limit. Cooling is delivered to the indoor ceiling coil via secondary loop carrying a propylene glycol. Because no flammable refrigerant ever cross into this occupied storage volume, this indirect system make the entry selection defensible to dodge and bomber. You will notice also we use the rack system instead of one large compressor. The large single R290 scroll compressor on the market, the Copland YB K1G class, tops out at roughly 22 kilowatts. Therefore, our rack utilize 15 duty unit plus 1 standby for redundancy. Each unit is paired with air-cooled microchannel condenser with required roughly 30% less than refrigerant charge of fin tube design and perform optimally in 35-degree ambient. So the good news, the assumption that we made earlier from prior slide are now closed with real number, not the placeholder. First, the heat exchanger, we size it to 3 to 5% degree approaching temperature, which is standard practice for this kind of equipment. That gave us a real efficiency number or coefficient of performance 1.6 to 1.7. Slightly lower than direct system would have, but it is an honest cost for keeping the flammable refrigerant outside. Second is the defrost energy. The extra energy used when the coil practically made of built ice. Using the ASHRAE guideline for this type of room in a humid climate, that at about 12% on top of the base cooling load. Once we add that in, our safety margin, the total cooling requirement goes from 260 kilowatt up to 327.6 kilowatt. Take the compressor count, that's where the 16 unit come from. The 327.6 divided by 22 kilowatts give us the 15 units plus the one that we have for our spare. And fourth, the pump and the fan power for circulating the glycol is now set about 18 kilowatts running continuously. So that's all, and I will give the stage to Haikal for talk about the electricity.
Okay, thanks Hamid. Now, I will explain where the power for all of this come from, which is the solar panels and the battery storage. Okay, Malaysians get a good sunlight, but it is not the same everywhere. This chart show the difference across the Peninsula Malaysia. Daily sunlight is usually between 4.5 to 5.5 kilowatts hours per square meters, but at our specific site data in Perak, it's a bit lower, around 3.6 to 3.8, I guess. So the difference of almost 2 units might not sound like much, but for the solar panel sizing, it actually matters a lot. This is exactly why we did not just design for a fixed number, but we built our own sizing so it can just depend on which region the facility is built in. So, good news is Malaysia does not have a big season change, which is the sunlight is fairly steady all year round, which match with the cool room that need the all year round too. The main things that change in Malaysia is cloud over, especially in the afternoon. So, how big is our solar system? We have about 3,000 square meters of usable roof space, which gives us roughly around 540 to 600 kilowatt of solar panels. And importantly is this system does not send power back to the TMB, but it only powers on our own facilities. But here is a real problem. Solar panels produce the most power around midday, but the cool room needs power all day and all night. So without a battery, we would still need a lot of grid power at night. So the obvious answer is to add the batteries. But normal use batteries are actually too expensive to make financial sense for this purpose. But study shows that if you only use batteries this way, they should stay under about 5% of our solar output to remain worth the cost. This nowhere near enough to run our compressor overnight. So instead, we use second life batteries that we used in electric cars before and are now sold for at much lower price, around 500 to 950 per kilowatt hours, instead of buying completely new ones. Same amount of storage but much lower cost. So this will make overnight battery storage actually realistic for SME business. Okay, next I would like to explain about the sizing update. Two things that were open questions are now answered. First, how helps does a second life battery needs to be before we accept it? We found a real mention studies, University of Malaya, test used Nissan Leaf battery for 4 models and they still can perform reliably even down to 47% of their original health. So we ascertained on our own cut-off at 16%, which gives us a real safety margin above what that study show was still usable. So the second one is, does our sizing method actually works for different regions? Yes, we test it against both the Northern Peninsula sunlight profile and our own site at Perak profiles. So the method holds up for both. Filling directly into the Robis, my friends will explain the next. Stoward still can open. The battery price is supplier range, not a signed quotation yet, and we haven't picked the exact inverter model. Small item compared to the what we just closed. So one good number, what good number that we already have is a real Malaysian rooftop solar project has shown a performance ratio of 0.78, meaning that it's delivering 78% of its theoretical best output in real condition. So this is benchmarks we check on our own members again.
Okay, thank you, Aikal. So far, you've heard about the envelope, the reference site plan, the solar arrays, and the battery, right? None of these pieces would ever coordinate themselves, right? So they need something to make them work together, right? So that's what I'll cover, which is the control layer that decides when each of them run actually. So the hardware sets a ceiling on how much energy we can save, right? Whether we actually capture that saving depends on the controller itself. So a variable speed compressor gets up to 20 to 40% over a fixed speed unit purely from the hardware itself. But the bigger opportunity sits on top of that, the predictive control against reactive control, as another around 10 to 25% in cost savings. That figure is also gotten from Afram and Janabi Sharafi 2014 research on the NPC in HVAC application. I want to be precise about this, which is it's a cost saving, not an energy saving, because those two are different things. It's like the reason that predictive control wins in simple. Reactive control only responds after the temperature has already drifted off target, right? A predictive controller looks ahead, like it predicts things. So it knows what the solar forecast is, the room temperature trends are, the tariff schedules are going to do, and it acts on that. It acts on what's it knows and it acts on it before the drift happens. And this also makes the whole design regionally adaptable, which ties back to what Shahid Objective 3 is. So the same controller logic can run anywhere, north or south or in the middle. Only the forecast input changes, local solar profile changes, and the local tariff window changes. Alright, so this is the full picture of how everything connects. So at the top is the controller, the supervisory controller, built in MATLAB. So that's the MPC, the model predictive controller. So it takes 4 forecasts, which is the solar irradiance, the cold room thermal state, the battery state, and TNB RP4 tariff. So on the left, you can see the 3 power sources, the solar array, second battery life, and also the grid. So this feeds into the bus, the electrical bus. So you can see the dash boundary around the outdoor package unit is containment boundary Hamid described before, which is the R290 that stays sealed in there. So only the glycol loop would go outside and carrying the non-flammable refrigerant crosses the cold room, right? So on the right, you can see the PCM, which is the phase change material, which acts as a thermal battery around negative 22 degrees. So this charges it when energy is cheap and solar is abundant, and also discharges to help cover the expensive tariff window. Okay, so for how does the actual controller how does it decide what to do, right? So MPC against the RP4 tariff, right? So there's 4 steps. First is forecast. So basically it gathers data, basically the solar irradiance, expected door activity, battery state, PCM state, and the current RP4 tariff. So once it knows it, it can predict from a formulation and calculation and predict what would happen in thermally, electrical. So it can predict what room temperature and power it needs. Then it optimizes it. So it controls what we use and what we don't use, so that it can be at the negative 18 degrees constantly. And fourth, after it does it all, it will always throw it away and do it again, so that it can always adapt to the newer data and be a better model. So why does the RP4 matter specifically? Because the actual rates are around 35.5 cents per kilowatt during peak hour. And also, on top of that, there's a separate demand charge, which is the 97 ringgit 6 cents every kilowatt of the highest 30 minutes demand in the peak window. So we want to shift it away. So we don't want to go at that 97 ringgit peak demand. So we want to vary it during the time of the day, so we can control how much cost that we can save. So for this, there's the morning and midday or afternoon, but I'm going to focus on the afternoon, the late afternoon, the most expensive tariff window. And this window is that sets our capacity charge for the whole month, basically. A basic system just keeps the cycling normal and pays the full price, right? So our compressor turns off and lights off the PCM and battery instead during that time, so that we don't use a lot of electricity from the grid during that peak hour. So we save more money and we use it during the times that are not more expensive. So this is the MPC results. So for multi-region, right? So for example, if we test it in the north, we could save 23.9% energy alone, which also saves around 44% of savings. Cost savings. However, for example, we test in Perak, right? It gets less sun, so it gets less energy. However, we get a negative 14% of raw energy savings. But however, it sounds bad because it's negative, right? But however, we still save 26.3% using this system. So overall, in any location that we try, it will always be cheaper to use this system, because it saves cost no matter what energy that we try to catch, because less energy we get less cost savings. So for the integration and controls that is still pending, basically we've done everything that we need, only the MATLAB and SimScape simulation, so that we can get the exact value, so that in the interim report we will get an exact data to how much that we would save and how much forecast that we get from the certain location. So now I'll pass to Shahid to bring it all together and show our concept to that how we designed it and how we chose it.
Thank you, Robbie. To close, I will show how we actually picked this final design out of 5 different concepts, walk through our own hand sketch of the facility, and then check it against the objective we opened with. Each of the 5 of us designed our own fully concept earlier in the project. To choose between them, we use something called the PERH matrix, basically a scoring table with 16 different criteria covering like the cost, safety, and how well it matches the datum B. All 5 of us scored all 5 concepts, including our own independently without discussing it first. If 2 people disagree by 2 points or more on the same item, we flag it and argue it through using evidence from our earlier reports. By the final round, everyone's scores were within 1 point of each other, and the same concept won every single time we redid it. Before the scores, here's what the winning design actually looks like on a paper. The first sketch is a side view of the loading area. You can see the outside temperature at 35 degrees Celsius on the left and minus 18 degrees Celsius inside the cold room at the right. The whole point of this drawing is to vestibule in the middle. There is small buffer room with high-speed roll-up door and PVC strip curtain. Every arrow marked infiltration block is a point where warm air used to leak in, and now it doesn't. This is a physical picture behind insulation numbers Ishraf and Hamid talked about earlier. This second sketch is the whole building from the outside, cut open so you can see everything at once. 70 meters by 70 meters and 8 meters tall. Starting from the outside working in, the refrigeration units and the R290 gas sensor sit on the concrete pad outside, exactly where Hamid said they would be, sealed away from the building. The glycol pipes run up and along the ceiling to the coils. Inside, you can see the frozen food storage area, the PCM thermal storage modules, and the second life battery room, and the loading vestibule with roll-up door at the front. The solar panel sits on the roof. This drawing is really just everyone's individual section put together into one picture. You can see all 5 of our parts of the project in a single sketch. This chart shows the final scores. Robbie's concept won with 20.6, just slightly ahead from my own concept at 19.6. So it was actually a close result, not a landslide. Because it was close, we took the best part from other concepts and added them into the winning design. We upgraded the insulation from 150 to 200 millimeters and added the stronger door barrier system you just saw in the sketch, both taken from ideas that scores better than us, specifically on these 2 points. We also seriously considered switching the refrigerant to R744 since it is scored the highest of anything in the whole matrix. But we rejected it for the same reasons Hamid explained earlier. The equipment is too specialized and too expensive for Malaysia contractors right now. To be honest, our final design does not actually beat datum B on pure refrigeration performance or insulation performance. It wins because it is much cheaper, much safer in Malaysia, and has smarter control. One honest point before we move to the conclusion. All 5 of our concepts scored badly on one thing, being able to build the same design at multiple different locations. None of us designed for that in Progress Report 1, so it is a real gap in the whole project, not just one person's design. That one is still open, and we are not pretending otherwise. But Other things we used to flag as open are now closed. Our insulation cost has a real basis, about 40 ringgit Malaysia per square meters for the upgrade. Check against for actual Malaysian suppliers, not just a guess. Hamid's refrigeration sizing is fully worked out with real numbers, and Robbie's has 2 real region tested results now using actual electricity tariff rates, not just a plan to test it later. So let's go back to the 4 objectives from the very start of this presentation. Objective 1, thermal envelope, met. Using the 200mm insulation and the stacked doors barrier system you saw in the sketch. Objective 2, renewable integration, met, with solar and second life battery storage that does not feed back into the grid. Objective 3, regional adaptability. We are now calling this substantially met, which is a step up from where we were before. We have real test results from 2 different regions using real tariff numbers, not just a plan. The very last step, running it inside a full MATLAB simulation, is still ahead of us, which is why we are not saying it is fully met yet. Objective 4, predictive control, met, with a MATLAB model predictive controller, and Robbie shows the real results in the north hitting almost 24% energy savings, right in a line with published research. So we have moved from 3 out of 4 objectives to a stronger position across the board with a clear, honest evidence behind each one. Here is our plan going forward. It is a sequence, not just a list. With Hamid's refrigeration numbers now finalized, the next step is porting Robbie's tested control logic into the full MATLAB and also Simscape simulation, and then Haikal logs the final battery and inverter quotation, and I finish the compliance mapping and quoted costing. It is a setup this way on purpose. Each step depends to the one before it, and most of heavy lifting is now already done. So I think that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening to us for this presentation, and we are happy to take any questions from all of you.